Activate Your Introvert, the podcast for entrepreneurs and business leaders to help unlock more productivity and creativity so you get a better business. Now, introverts are not always the best at being front of mind, as they tend to keep on doing great stuff but not talking about it. And this can be made even worse when you only meet your boss in virtual meetings. One of the great things about recording these podcasts each week is getting to speak to other subject experts. And today I'm honoured to interview Josie Brooke, the Pathfinder coach. Josie is another expert introvert coach, and her website is on the sleeve note of the podcast. We recorded a conversation we were recently having on the subject of keeping top of mind of your boss. If you'd like to talk to me about issues raised in this podcast or others relating to introverts, please visit introvertinbusiness.co.uk. Welcome, Josie. Would you like to start off by introducing yourself?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for having me. So I'm Josie Brooke, and I'm known as the Pathfinder. So what I do is I really help HR managers skyrocket retention, protect against, surprise losses of their best and brightest, and learn how to properly engage all team members by uncovering the mismanagement or even neglect of introverted staff.
We've spoken quite a lot because we interact, but for some of the viewers, they might have guessed you're in the States, whereas I'm in England. Whereabouts are you in the States?
So I'm in Kentucky, actually.
My geography is awful, so I do apologise. If I looked at a map of the States, is that near the bottom, to the right, left?
It is to the right. We're kind of in the southeast, I guess you would say. I'm sure you can probably hear I have a little bit of a country accent, so you might be able to guess.
Thank you for that. I ask all of my guests, are you an introvert or an extrovert? And what does that mean for you?
Yes, definitely an introvert. And for those into the Myers-Briggs type stuff, there are 16 personalities. I'm an INFJ, and we're lucky to be one of the rarest personality types. So that comes with its gifts and its struggles as well. That's why, I've had my own struggles with being an introvert and trying to figure out how to navigate the workplace and just how to really build, self-esteem in such an extroverted culture. So I am blessed and fortunate to be able to be one myself and understand what that's like. And I'm also a professional counselor. So in many ways, personally and professionally, I know what it's like to be an introvert, and I know how to really help us stand out and feel more confident in who we are as well.
So we started this discussion because we were talking about the increase in remote working, and also the problem that many introverts have in being top of mind with the boss. Because of course, if the boss sees a couple of extroverts in the team, the likelihood is that they are going to be top of mind because they talk a lot more, shall we put it like that? So how can an introvert be top of mind? How could they stay connected and get recognized for their accomplishments?
Yes, that is a great question. So, it's kind of varies depending, of course, on, a typical work environment. There are several ways to be able to do this. For instance, a lot of times introverts don't particularly like talking about their achievements or accomplishments because we don't want to appear arrogant or like we're bragging. And that's, a major thing that can be a detriment, because introverts often do so much, and we do so much behind the scenes that no one even knows how much we're accomplishing. And so in a typical work environment, and I'll give some specific tips on if you're doing remote work, how you can do that. I suggest bringing up, what you're working on or something that you've accomplished like naturally in a conversation. So a lot of introverts feel awkward and they don't, again, like I said, they don't want to feel like they're bragging. But bringing it up in a conversation, like saying, I was really excited to get the opportunity to work on, whatever that is, this project, or to be a part of this, and we were able to achieve this outcome. Or, I was really honored to be invited to this or recognized for this or to earn this. And then follow up with a question, for the person that you're talking with. Like, what are you working on right now? Or what's an accomplishment you're really proud of? What are you excited about? So you're able to say what you've done, but it comes off very naturally, so you don't feel like you're bragging. And then you really show compassion and a lot of good communication skills by bringing it back to them as well. And specifically thinking about right now, if you're doing remote work, emailing your manager, because this is a big change for a lot of organizations. They're struggling to know how to manage this and how to make sure that their employees are still being productive, because normally if you're at work, you can at least see that someone is at their desk. They have this idea that, okay, I know that I've seen them at their desk, I've seen them at their computer, so they must be working or they must be productive. Right now, managers aren't able to do that. They're not able to go around. They're not able to just check in with people. So they're struggling too to know how to keep up with everything and how to make sure everyone's staying productive and on track. So as an introvert, emailing your manager, telling them that you want to help make this transition easy for them, or to see how else you can be helpful. So would it be okay to send them a weekly checklist of where you're at on projects or what you accomplished this week? And that shows several things. It shows you're ambitious, that you're disciplined, that you're thoughtful. Because sometimes introverts can get a bad rap as not being driven enough, because we're not talking all the time, or we're not presenting ourselves the same way as extroverts, but we're actually really internally motivated, and it's natural for us to be helpers. So in general, just being that person who makes a suggestion based on what you thought would be helpful is really going to help you stand out in a good way.
I think that's a really good point, Josie, because I've come across that when I've been coaching a number of my clients as well, which is that they say that people think that they're not ambitious because they don't naturally jump up all the time. But I love the idea of that weekly summary, especially at the moment, must be incredibly useful, emailing back that checklist of the things that you've done, or perhaps just getting more into asking your manager a question, but in a really constructive way, so that you're able to say the things that you have done, which immediately points out, I've done a shed load and I'm concerned to help you.
Right. Yeah, it's a really concise way to be able to show a lot of strengths all in one. And that's so true. Introverts, like I said, we do so much, and we are really internally driven. Like, I think one of the reasons that we don't share a lot of our accomplishments is because we don't want to come off like we're bragging, but we typically don't need as much, admiration, I guess, for what we've done, or acknowledgement. Like, we get a lot of internal satisfaction from what we do and accomplishing it ourselves. Now, it's always nice to be recognized, and most introverts I know are, happy just to get some recognition for what they're doing, but it can be a struggle because, as I said, they don't always express what they're working on, so people just don't know. And so, yes, emailing, and that's really a good way to stay top of mind and to really show you're considerate of others as well.
Mm. And I love the first point that you made, I think was a superb one too, about being in a conversational way of talking about the things you've done. You gave a couple of great examples. I was really pleased to, I was honored to, I was excited to, talking about the thing you've done, and then doing what introverts do incredibly well anyway, flipping it back as a question about the other person. Because most introverts are much better at listening and talking about somebody else than they are about talking about themselves. So get that piece in and then flip it back, because that way it doesn't sound like bragging. The first thing is making sure that we recognize our own accomplishments rather than just getting them done and then moving on to the next stuff.
Yes, that's a great point. A lot of introverts I know that I've worked with, we really tend to underestimate how much value we're really giving. I know a specific client that I've been working with, and she saved the company from a $40,000 mistake, but she kind of just blew it off and was like, oh, well, I just kind of caught something and mentioned it to the manager. And I'm like, this is huge. This saved so much money and so much wasted time that would have went into this project that wouldn't have been successful. But she felt like she was just doing her job, nothing really major. So yes, definitely recognizing that in yourself is the first step to even be able to share that with others.
You're right. We tend to undervalue ourselves. And that links in with, as you were saying that, it reminded me of my other pet hates is somebody turns around and gives you a compliment and says, you did really well with that, or whatever it might be. And then what do many people say? Oh, it was nothing. Hey, if somebody's just giving you a compliment, accept it and thank them. Don't dismiss it and say it was nothing. Accepting it is a polite thing to do. Dismissing it is rude. Somebody's just given you something and you've said, nah, it was nothing. Chelsea, we're nearly out of time. Is there any other big tips that you'd say for capitalizing on and being recognized by your boss?
Yeah, so I think a big one right now that I think might be really helpful is I know a lot of us are doing virtual meetings and conference calls and things like that since we're not able to, get together as we usually are. And, some of the same suggestions that I would give for in-person meetings, like coming to the meeting prepared with questions or statements that you have, can still be really helpful. But something that my clients have found especially helpful on conference calls is to volunteer to be the person that sends out a wrap-up of the call, like the takeaways or the goals or the insights from the call. This does a lot of things. First of all, it makes you more memorable to your boss and the people in the meeting because you're staying top of mind, because they know that you're the person who's responsible for, writing down the takeaways or the insights. And so they're more likely to say, oh, hey, Chelsea, can you make sure that's in the wrap-up, make sure that we get this down? And then it makes you feel a lot better because introverts tend to do really well when we have a job, when we feel like we're being useful and productive. And we feel more confident to be able to ask someone to repeat something, explain something, or ask them for clarification, just saying, hey, just making sure I understand correctly for the notes I'm taking for the wrap-up. Can you repeat that? Can you explain this? And that really helps you stay top of mind, especially in virtual meetings where introverts, we're kind of anxious about just jumping in anyway.
Oh,
that's not really our style.
Absolutely, he says jumping in, which is kind of awkward. As you say, it's not my style either. And I think it goes hand in glove with something that I said to somebody yesterday, funnily enough, who's an introvert. They've stepped up in the last couple of weeks and they actually volunteered to facilitate and run the virtual team meetings. Working from home probably means your team is having more meetings than normal, even if it's once a day for 15 minutes. The introvert that I was talking to has stepped up and said, can I help you, boss? If I was to run the meetings, that would allow you to focus on making sure everyone's all right. And again, it's a really simple way that plays into introvert superpowers. The listening hard, questions to probe and just check for clarity is something that introverts are really good at, and not pushing themselves to the front, obviously, but doing it in that way where they're running the meeting and, as you said, then doing the wrap up. Superb way of showing your skills. Chelsea, I've really enjoyed our conversation, and we do have to end, I'm afraid. If some of the listeners want to get back in touch with you, how would they do that?
Of course, you can find me on all social media channels at The Pathfinder for You.
Thank you, Chelsea. Great conversation. Look forward to catching up with you soon.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to Activate Your Introvert, and I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. I'd love to see your reviews on the iTunes store. Thank you once again, and catch up with you next week.